Hello again. It's been such a long time since we spoke. I started this channel, you might remember, during the first lockdown and COVID, because lots of people were emailing me with stuff, questions about mental and emotional health. And from time to time I get questions and I haven't really done much about it, but maybe it's time to get going again. And I think the reason is because I've had quite a few questions around things to do with work, to do with mental health at work, but also how you handle relationships at work. And so I thought I'd just cover one or two of those, if that's okay. I'm having a hard time at work with my colleagues. They all go to the pub after work and often get lunch with one another, but I need that time to recharge. How do I say no without upsetting them? Relationships at work are such difficult things. It's unfortunate that the culture with an awful lot of our workplaces has become about command and control, and we've kind of lost sight of why we work. Now you might say, well, you go to work because you have to get enough money to pay the bills and put food on the table. Yeah, that's an important part of it, but my own view is that it's important for any employer to be able to pay enough so that money isn't part of the discussion. They need to pay enough so that money's just that bit of the agenda is dealt with before we get to it. What's the rest of it about at work? Why do we do what we do? Well, it depends, and it's different for everybody, of course, but there are, an awful lot of people get their meaning and purpose out of work. They get a feeling of achieving things and of being competent out of work. They have good relationships when they're at work. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't get those things. So an awful lot of this is to do with the culture of what's going on at work. I always think of the workplace as like a rowing boat. That's always my analogy, and it's never let me down yet. The rowing boats. There's a lot of, maybe you're a self-employed plumber or whatever, like me, a one-man band or a one-woman band, and there you are rowing your little rowing boat across potentially a big pond on your own. That's fine. You've got great autonomy. You've got a great sense of choice. You've got all sorts of advantages through being self-employed. But we all get an awful lot of the emotional nourishment that we need day to day from our relationships with people. People are difficult, so are we. And people at work can be even more difficult if, for example, they've been over-promoted, if they're out of their depth at work, if for some reason they're feeling insecure, if the company's not doing well. Let's go back to the rowing boat analogy. In the rowing boat, there might be several people all rowing the boat in the same direction. The first thing we need to do is to figure out for ourselves whether or not we are on a good voyage. Are we on a noble voyage? Is our boat going somewhere for good reason? If we're simply going somewhere for the purposes of corporate greed, that may or may not sit well with us. I'm not making a judgment call about that. That's entirely up to you. It may well be that you work for a wonderful charitable organisation that genuinely does good in the world and helps other people. And so you might decide that your boat is on a noble voyage. That's great. We have to have a good deal of confidence in the person who's got a hand on the helm, the person or people who've got a hand on the helm. They're deciding where that boat should be steered at any one moment. Boats which are steered by a committee often end up going round in circles. A boat that is steered by somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows how to manage people and get the best out of people and create an environment in which everybody can thrive, is likely to have a bunch of people rowing for him or her a useful way. I think the rowing boat analogy is useful to go back to the original question, this business about going out with everybody and your social life outside work. I must admit, if you go and meet any of my colleagues from my employment of the past, they will probably have seen me as somebody who just lightly touched the surface of going out with everybody and being sociable with colleagues at work, but none of them became true friends. So what did we get out of that? Perhaps it's to do with the culture that's set by the management of your company. Perhaps they're part of it. Perhaps they're all drinkers and you're not a big drinker, and that's fine. It's okay for you not to join in. Just don't join in, but also don't be, be fearless in why you're not joining in. I really appreciate the invitation. Big drinking things are not my thing, but thanks ever so much for inviting me. Perhaps next time. And from time to time, there's nothing wrong with going out for that one quick drink after work and at least sitting down and getting to know people in a different way. The answer to most of these questions is it depends, and it depends on an awful lot of things for an awful lot of reasons. But if you are struggling to fit in with the boat and row in time with everybody on the boat, it's worth stopping and thinking whether that might be because you're in the wrong boat. It might be because the boat's being steered by somebody who's creating a culture in the boat that you don't have a lot of confidence in. It might be for all sorts of different reasons, but as long as you don't just allow yourself to be pressured and pressed into fitting in and doing something for that old-fashioned reason, the peer pressure. We hear an awful lot about a peer pressure, and we might think of that as something that gets kids doing daft things when they're at school, when they're teenagers, which they later regret in life. But peer pressure is driven by a need to belong. I just think it's really important that you feel comfortable and assertive enough to be able to say, thanks, but no thanks. Really appreciate the kind invitation, but perhaps next time. Last little thing, stop worrying about what people think about you. It's the best route to good mental health. What people think of you is, firstly, it's none of your business. Secondly, you will probably never know what they really think about you at work or in any other aspect of your life. Last important thing, please take really good care of yourself and take great care of each other.